How do you prove that you are a data center subject matter expert and trusted advisor? How do you prove that your team, your company is comprised of subject matter experts and trusted advisors? What it largely comes down to is there are a lot of people sharing a ton of really, really selfish content on their LinkedIn profiles. In other words, you're talking about all the things that you care about and virtually none of the things that your prospects and clients care about, at least in the early and middle stages of their journey. Put it in another way, it's as if you're going to shop for a new car. You're looking to purchase or lease a new car, and your lease isn't up for another 6 or 9 months. So you're not really in an intense phase of figuring out what car you want to get next, but you're trying maybe once a month on a weekend, going out for an hour or two and sitting in some cars, checking out the legroom, finding out some pros and cons, maybe doing a test drive. Of course, we live in a world now where there's so much information at our fingertips. So using the salesperson as the to gather information and the source of information, those days are long, long gone. However, for a commission-hungry car salesperson, that doesn't necessarily stop them from trying to close every person that walks through the door on the spot. So much to the point that they totally miss the cues when you tell them, back off, we're 8 months away from our lease expiration, we're just kind of looking around. You can see our kids are really, really tall for teenagers, right? We want to make sure that everyone's got good leg room. We're concerned with comfort and safety and value and all those other factors. So we're for sure not buying today. And that last part, they're narcissistically, egotistically, whatever you want to call it, they just are incapable of hearing that you aren't buying today. And because of that, they keep badgering and nagging you to the point where eventually they burn an enormous amount of goodwill. You throw up your hands, you walk out, and you're like, I can't deal with these people. They're totally like, they're totally tone deaf. They don't get what we're looking for. They don't get that we're just at the early stages. So the problem is, as a company in and around the data center industry, you don't want to show up looking like a car salesperson. If anything, if you had to default to a useful stereotype or framework, you want to really show up looking more like a Big Four consultant, as if your expertise is so valuable that it feels like a paid enterprise consulting engagement that your client booked with EY or PwC or KPMG or Deloitte or something like that. That's the key to immediately changing the positioning of your client-facing team, regardless of whether they're account executives, sales development reps, marketers, account managers, product managers. Product folks usually don't have that problem. Channel partnerships managers, sometimes they actually do have that exact problem. So we want to make sure that we elevate the positioning of your client-facing team so that they are able to add value as a consultant, a teacher, a trusted advisor, and a subject matter expert. And that can take a while. What it will come down to for most companies is there will be certain talent on your team roster that brought a lot of institutional knowledge of your industry and of your most important buyer personas in their industries with them when they joined your company. There will be some that continue to accumulate and build on that in their tenure with your company. And then there will be complete beginners, either because they're complete beginners to the data center industry, they're complete beginners to their job, or a little bit of both. So at the end of the day, getting this right largely comes down to improving your onboarding, your upskilling, your professional development of all of your most important team members, or at the minimum, cross-pollinating the expertise of some of your more senior team members with your more junior team members. I've always said too, not everyone is going to be able to elevate all the way up to the level of being seen as a thought leader. But over time, a lot of people can be perceived as teachers and consultants. And even at the absolute minimum, a relatively new hire who's been with your company maybe for a few weeks or a few months, maybe you set the bar a little differently. Maybe you're positioning them as a tour guide, as a concierge of your company's best internal resources. So when they meet with prospects, when they meet with clients, they are phenomenal at being able to articulate the great internal resources that you have that can help this particular prospect or client get educated and learn more about how other companies have gone through this journey, how other stakeholders, how other job functions, job roles have gone through this kind of journey. And again, it is a journey. Let's be very realistic about this. There's awareness where companies, where individuals just know they have a goal or a problem that they're trying to figure out, but they don't really have a tightly defined category name or solution name. And they're certainly not looking for specific companies. So that's the awareness stage, often called the top of the funnel. The consideration stage, sometimes called the middle of the funnel, is where they've given their goal, they've given their challenge, they've given their stressor a name. And because they've given it a name, they're now in much better shape to be able to start figuring out the criteria that they're going to use to evaluate all of the options that are potentially in front of them. So at this stage, things like comparison guides, buyer's guides, webinars, where you spend more time with prospects and clients, can be incredibly impactful in this middle stage and in this consideration stage. And decision stage, if your company is completely new to most of this, that's usually the place where most companies will get a passing grade, even if they're completely dropping the ball in the awareness and the consideration stage. The problem is, though, is most of your prospects are nowhere near the decision stage. In fact, most industry experts can see that only about 5 or 10% of your market is ready for sales contact at any given point in time. Like 95% of the people that you come across could be a fantastic fit for your company a couple weeks, a couple months, maybe several months later, but they're not ready now. And if you force your selfish agenda on them, all you're going to do is burn goodwill and pretty much guarantee that you will not be on the short list when they're actually ready to start looking at these issues. So we need to meet prospects and clients where they actually are, not where we want them to be. So we have the awareness, the consideration, and the decision stages of their buyer's journey, their active research process that they go through between the itch of a problem that they have or an aspirational goal and their ultimate purchase decision. And there can be as many as 28 touch points that need to happen in between complete stranger and purchase decision. Most companies in and around the data center space, if they're doing well, are in on maybe 1 or 2 or 3, perhaps a maximum of 4 of these 28 touch points. And that's an enormous problem. And this is an especially pronounced problem for companies that spend a disproportionate amount of their marketing and sales budget on field events, on huge, really, really expensive conferences, multi-day national and global conferences where obviously adjust for your local currency, but where it's not uncommon to find that companies are spending anywhere from like $80,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars by having several team members attend, staff a booth, throw cocktail parties, receptions, what have you. And if you're a very well capitalized, large enterprise business, and you have very strong unit economics where an average sale is worth hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, that can be worthwhile. However, just remember that no matter how epic your cabana party is poolside in Las Vegas, no matter how amazing the golf tournament is that you sponsored, each of those only counts for 1 of the 28 touch points. So let that sink in for a minute. What that means is even if you're planning on doing that event 364 days later at that particular conference's incarnation the following year, you still need to figure out 26, 27 other ways to stay top of mind with that prospect or client throughout the next 12 months between now and when they're ready to purchase. So in a lot of ways, I tell people that if they're sports fans, to imagine that you're the general manager of a professional sports team. This probably resonates the most with people that are fans of American, like Major League Baseball or NFL or NBA, but basically any sport, even football in Europe and in other regions around the world. This should resonate to a certain degree where you're the general manager of this team. You have a certain amount of payroll. You'd love to be able to recruit like an Aaron Judge or Massey or someone like a superstar. But the problem is, if you go and you recruit that superstar, like 50% of your company's payroll may immediately be gone for that particular superstar. So do you really have enough to spread out your payroll throughout the rest of the team to get a good supporting cast of teammates to make the superstar successful? And then, of course, if that particular superstar gets injured, what happens to the rest of the team? So that's the way I'd encourage you to think about your coverage with these touch points is, do you have enough budget to be able to spread it around so you can cover the other 26, 27 touch points beyond the epic field marketing event that you are doing? And a lot of the good news is a lot of that coverage coincides with your need to be seen as a consultant, teacher, trusted advisor, and subject matter expert, because a lot of what's incredibly important is showing up in the awareness and the consideration stages. And instead of showing up as a transaction-focused, commission-hungry, client-facing member of your sales or account manager team, that those individuals are in turn showing up as teachers, trusted advisors, and subject matter experts. And even if there aren't people on your team that are incredibly strong in those areas, they should be involved as facilitators, as moderators, as hosts. So, for example, let's say that you have a mid-level sales director who knows the industry reasonably well, but probably can't carry doing 12 educationally rich, content rich, subject matter expert webinars over the course of the next 12 months. Maybe they can do 2 or 3 of those solo, but what they do have is you have an amazing list of clients. You have an amazing list of industry contacts where you can invite those folks to come on a webinar as panelists. So instead of sending your chief revenue officer, your sales director into an industry conference where you pitch them moderating a panel at a conference, they're basically doing the same thing virtually on a webinar and on a live stream. And you get an amazing halo of social proof that comes along with that as the industry expert, as the moderator. Obviously, they'll help to invite their friends and coworkers and contacts along with that as well. There's social proof element. They get a tremendous amount of value from participating and getting to know the other panelists. You can record the webinar, you can repurpose it lots and many, many different ways. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of different ways to show up as the subject matter expert and the trusted advisor. But what it comes down to is having a healthy respect for the way that people now research and make their purchase decisions. And once you get past the notion that spending most of your time begging for meetings is a good idea, and it's actually not, the reality is you're far better off spending most of your time getting the right people to attend an educational webinar or an offline version of that as a breakfast seminar, lunch and learn symposium or something like that. Any place where you're getting the perfect people to see someone from your team as the go-to expert, because that alone can drive tremendous sales acceleration. And to the extent that one or more of your delighted clients comes along with that expert and helps to participate in that conversation, or is there in the networking or in part of the interview, enormous social proof with sales accelerators. But it largely comes down to having a healthy self-respect for their changes in buyer preferences, going deep into understanding the customer insight, researching and building out their buyer personas, and building this really, really deep content, editorial strategy, event strategy that's focused on positioning your team to be seen as the go-to experts in your space about anything and everything to do with what you do for those particular buyer personas in the data center industry.